It's been, what, I finished this on the 7th of September, so it's been over a month, let's say. Well, that's not going to work. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my September wrap-up. So September was the Magical Readathon, and I read a lot. I read 14 books in the month of September, and they all counted for the Magical Readathon, which is insane, actually. So I'll leave the vlogs linked above because I did vlog all 4 weeks of Magic Readathon. So I'll plop them throughout the video as the books that are in them come up, or they're linked down below if you are curious about them. That's really all I have to say as far as an introduction. Like, all these books were for the Magic Readathon. I'm not going to talk about like the prompts and everything that they worked for, but I was able to finish both careers that I wanted to do. So I feel very accomplished. So let's just dive into the stats. Let's just get this video going. Like I mentioned, 14 books, which was over 4,154 pages and 95 hours listened as far as audiobooks. And that was over 2 audiobooks, 1 ebook, 3 physical books, and 8 mixed. I did a lot of mixed reading this month. I mean, I do a lot of mixed reading a lot of the month, but physically reading with an audiobook in, I did a lot of that this month. We have age categories next. We had 1 middle grade, 2 YA, and 11 adult books. Genres were pretty spread out, I think, this month. We had 1 sci-fi, 5 fantasy, 3 romance, 2 poetry, 2 mystery thriller, and 1 historical fiction. And ratings. We had 3 5 stars, amazing, 4 4 stars, 6 3 stars, and 1 DNF. The first book that I finished in the month of September was Artemis by Andy Weir, which is my very first Andy Weir book. I've never read a book by this author, and I gave it 3 stars. Trigger warnings in this book for domestic abuse and relationships with a minor, specifically historically. This book was interesting because it's very science heavy. I mean, that's, from what I've come to understand, that's just how Andy Weir writes. I mean, yes, it's also a sci-fi. This book follows our main character, Jazz, who lives in the city of Artemis on the moon. And she's a smuggler. She ends up striking a deal with one of the guys that she smuggles for a bigger job. And so she ends up taking it. And then, of course, it goes terribly wrong, and lots of other things come from that. Sci-fi and me, we don't always align because of the said scienciness of it. It's not my favorite genre. I do enjoy it. And when I read a good book, like, it's a genre that I don't gravitate towards. What am I trying to say? It's not a genre I gravitate towards all the time, but there are a lot of instances when I have gravitated towards it, and it's fantastic. Like, I'm thinking the Illuminae Files series. I was all about that. The Descender graphic novels. There's more that I can't think off the top of my head right now. And there's a lot of books that are considered sci-fi that I've enjoyed. This was not necessarily one of them, and I think it boils down to 2 things. One is that, yes, it's very sciencey, and things aren't explained like you're an idiot sometimes, but I needed that, and normally that would annoy me, and it did at times, but there were times when I needed that to understand what the heck was going on, because things are said like, you have one character who's explaining something to our main character, and she's like, yeah, everyone knows what that is. And I'm over here like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So there's a lot of that, like the technology, or like the technicalness of things, logistics maybe is a better word, didn't always work for me. And then the second thing that I think didn't work is I did not like how this book ended. It went in one direction, and then the last chapter changed that direction, and I think if we had continued in the direction I thought we were going in, it would have been a significantly more powerful end. But because things got twisted and kind of did a 180 at the very last second, the impactful moments, the one that I'm thinking of specifically, was cheapened. So there were some things about the ending that I was like, this is not realistic. I mean, it's Sailor Moon, so it's really not realistic, but it's not realistic for the characters to do the things that they are doing, and for this to end this way. So there was that element. There were some elements in between where we see like letters between Jazz and a friend, and you find out later in the book who this friend is, but having these letters and knowing who this person is did not impact the plot. So like if those letters were not in there, it wouldn't have done anything for the plot as far as like changing how things went. So there were just like elements that I could not figure out why they were in this, and I liked a lot of it. Like a lot of the action-packed moments were good, and I liked the way that this was done. I think if this was turned into a movie, it would honestly be a little bit better because some things could be fleshed out more, but overall, it was just kind of okay. But it is a consensus that I have discovered from talking to some people that this is not Andy Weir's best book according to like the Andy Weir community. So definitely an author that I'm going to try again. Definitely an author that I probably wouldn't have tried. I read this for a book club, so I wouldn't have probably picked him up anytime soon, if at all. So I'm glad that I did because now I know. And I know that like his stuff is good. And so like I would be interested in seeing maybe some other things that he has written that other people who are really big fans of Andy Weir like better. I don't know. This one just, I mean, I was reading it. I was into the story when I was reading it, but like looking back on it, it was just kind of an okay experience. The next book I read was the 11th volume of Cherry Magic by Yu Toyota. I gave this one 5 stars. I've talked about the series a lot, so I feel like I don't have too much to add, but this series follows 2 guys, Adachi and Kurosawa, and Adachi turns 30 at the beginning of the series, and in doing so, he discovers he has this power where if he touches someone, he can read their thoughts, and he accidentally bumps into Kurosawa, who is a coworker of his, who has a gigantic crush on Adachi, and so it's the two of them figuring out if there's feelings there, what are next steps, that kind of thing. So in the 10th volume, a very big step was taken in their relationship, and this one I loved seeing the kind of like, what's next? Like we've had the big step. What does this mean for our characters now? And I liked seeing them settle into that situation. We also have a side couple that is kind of taking center stage in this one a little bit more, and I hope that they do again more in the future because I really like them as a couple. I mean, obviously Adachi and Kurosawa is my favorite, and I want to follow them. Like that's the story we're telling. I want to be with them mainly, but I like seeing this other couple, and I hope that they take a little bit more of a center role and seeing where things go with them because they were fun, and I like seeing just the difference in the two relationships and how the same situation is done differently. I'm trying to be very vague, so I love the series. It's amazing. The next book that I picked up was Princess of Souls. It was by Alexander Christo. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I finished this one a month ago. Like I finished this on the 7th of September. It's been over a month, and I have forgotten so much about this plot, which I feel like says something. From what I remember, we follow our 2 main characters, Nox and Celestra, and Celestra is I don't even remember, oh my gosh. She is the heir, she's got a lot of magic, and she's the heir to this magic, so her mom is the one who's currently working for this very cruel king, and she knows he's cruel, but it's her life, and it's all that she thinks that she can do. And then there's this guy named Nox who works as a soldier for the king, and his father has died, and so he's trying to basically get revenge for that. And so his goal is to kill the king, to kill the witch, and to kill Celestra because she's kind of like the witch in training, and he doesn't care about anything else. He just wants those 3 to die. And of course, the 2 of them cross paths and start on an adventure to kind of right some wrongs in the kingdom. So it is your stereotypical YA fantasy plot where like he thinks that he knows her and he doesn't, and there's way more to her than he thought. They end up going on an adventure. There's some romance there. It's very like everything you could think of that would happen in a YA fantasy story plot wise happens in here. There's nothing original, and I think that was my problem. Was I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed being with these characters when I was actively reading it. Most of the time I was having a good time. I would space out at times, but like this is one of the books that I physically read and had the audiobook in, and I don't know what it was about this like physical book, but it was very fun to read. I don't know if it's the font, if it, like I don't know what it was. I think that kind of kept me going because the story was just fine. And again, I have forgotten most of it. I don't remember a lot of what happens in this story, which I think says a lot. One thing that I did like about this book specifically is our main character, Celestra. She does have a lot of that like chosen one kind of trope with her, but she is overwhelmed by that. Like she knows that I think she's 16 in this book, and she's like, I am 16. This is insane for me to be having the, fate of the world on my shoulders. This is crazy. She's a very strong-willed main character, like most characters that I read, but I don't know, there's just something about her that felt realistic in that sense, because when you get into this, they're super young, but the weight's on their shoulders, they just kind of like go with it. And she does go with it, but because she doesn't see another way out, and she acknowledges the fact that this is insane. And so I liked that. I liked that she shared those moments of vulnerability. I don't see that very often. Now, if you like the YA fantasy plots and timelines and tropes and whatever, if that's your thing, then you're going to love this book. There's nothing wrong with loving that at all. I just have seen this specifically a bunch of different times, so it just kind of felt repetitive to me. And there's definitely a couple of books I think in this list where that's the same thing. That's my, I won't say it's a critique because it's not a critique. Like this is a YA book. It's made for YA readers. I think I've just reached that point where some YA fantasy does it for me and some YA fantasy doesn't, and this falls into the doesn't category. The next one I picked up is Otter by Catherine Applegate. This is a middle grade story about an otter. Surprise. An otter named Otter. It's not confusing at all. I will say, before I talk about this one, trigger warnings for birth trauma, because I expected going into this, like, look at the cover. It's a super cute, fuzzy story about an otter. She ends up going to a rehabilitation center. It's the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is a rehab center in California. And this otter specifically has been there twice. They grew up in the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and the book starts with Otter saving her friend's life from a shark attack. So she gets attacked by a shark and then ends up going back to this aquarium. So it's split in different timelines. You have that story of like her getting attacked by the shark and being rescued. And then you have the middle section, which is the history of how she knows this aquarium, how she grew up, how she's been there since she was days old because there was a storm that separated her from her mother, and how she kind of like was rehabilitated and then sent back out into the wild. And then we go back to the present day after the shark attack, after they're at this aquarium. So like I said, you think it's going to be this super like fluffy story, like look how cute this cover is, and it takes a twist real fast, which is why there are trigger warnings for birth trauma about like these otters. And so with the other book that I read by this author, which was Wish Tree, I went in knowing what that one was about. You go in knowing it's going to be a little bit of a harder story. I mean, it's the perspective of Tree in a neighborhood that is not accepting a family. And so you know things are going to be deep because of that. This does not give you any indication of that. I just assumed it was a story about an otter who was being rehabilitated. It is written in verse, so it's very, very easy to get through, which is how the Wish Tree was as well. I don't know if that's just how this author writes, but that's the case for the two books that I've read by them. And I just really liked seeing this deep story. I liked seeing the progression of the character of Otter, because she's very naive in the sense of like she knows everything, but she is very energetic. Maybe it's a better word, not naive, but very energetic. Is bouncing off the walls and is ready to take any risk for fun or food, and she has to grow up by the end of this book. So there's a lot that goes into this book. And I was thinking it was just kind of okay. I was like sitting here half through this book going like, what is the point of this book? We're this otter is being rehabilitated. We see this otter story. Okay, great. There's not really a plot here. And then we get to the end and I go, aha, I see. So if you were like me and you get to the second part and you're like, why is this a thing? Just wait. The third part tells you everything you need to know. And it was very good. I gave this 4 stars. I don't know if I said that already. I also really liked the way that Otter views humans, because obviously there's very different language. So things that are very mundane to you and I may not be for otters. And so it was interesting being in her head and she was describing certain things, and you would go, "Oh, that's a broom," whatever, And I just liked that. It was very interesting to see that those descriptions and being in the brain of an otter, and I think that being written in verse definitely lends itself well to that type of story. I don't know. It's very cute. I liked it. The next one that I picked up is Hello Stranger, which is the 4th in the Ravenels series by Lisa Kleypas. I gave this 5 stars. This was my favorite book so far in the series. I say that every time I read a new book in the series, and I don't think that it can ever be topped. And then I read the next one, and it can be topped, because that's what I felt about the third one. I thought the third one was my favorite book in the entire series. And then I read this one, and I said, oh, okay. So trigger warnings for this, in this book specifically, for attempted sexual assault. This series follows the Ravenel family. And every book follows either a member of the family or someone who is connected. So in this one, we follow our main female lead is Dr. Garrett Gibson, and we meet in the second book, and she is a female doctor in England, which of course is crazy. And so she works for the department store Winterbourne, who is the main male lead from the second book. And so she has shown up in the last couple of books. She actually plays a pretty big role in the last couple of books. And so this one, we see her take center stage. And then the main male lead is Ethan Ransom, I think is his last name. And he is an agent for Scotland Yard, but he's kind of like a secret agent in the sense of he works under the law, so he can do things that may not be legal for like police officers to do, but like he gets away with it because he's part of a secret organization. And so he and her meet in, I think, the second book. Well, you're introduced to both of them in the second book. You think they meet in the second book, but they have a much longer conversation in the previous book. And so it's the two of them, and they have an attraction towards each other, but he is trying to find information out about his boss because he thinks his boss is dirty, and she's trying to help him. And of course, he's like, no, 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 this is very dangerous. You cannot be near me. So it's, that fighting attraction between them. What I found really interesting about this book is it gives you that feeling of like the sweeping romance stories you would get in like classic literature. I'm thinking like Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, all of those like Regency kind of stories that are considered like classic romances. You get that vibe in here. It's not written particularly lyrical or anything like that. Yes, there are smutty scenes, not a lot, but some. But like their romance just is elevated so much more than like your stereotypical Regency historical romance kind of story. And I think that boils down to this book is, yes, there's a plot, but there is a lot of conversations in this book between our two main characters. They're at an event, and so then you spend 2 chapters of them having a conversation. Or they're over here doing this thing, and you have, like, they have some downtime, so you have them having conversations. So it's not like a character-driven story by any means. There's definitely a plot, and there's definitely action and things happening. But I think because there is so much time spent on the two of them getting to know each other, that gives it the vibe of having this deeper, more realistic connection to their romance, which just takes the whole story to a different level. So I love them. Also, like, you've got this super strong-willed female main character who takes nothing from nobody because of the industry that she's in. She's had to be strong. She knows how to defend herself. And then you have Ethan, who is drawn to her and knows that she's a super strong, independent woman and will not try to soften that, but tries to help her in the sense of like, great, you know how to defend yourself? Let's try a different form of defending yourself. Like, you know how to fence. That's fantastic. That's not going to help you on the streets. Let me teach you how to fight. And so it's things like that where he is always there looking out for her, but he doesn't try to change her. He doesn't try to become the big, strong savior. He's like, I'm here if you need me, but I'm going to teach you how to survive. And so I just love I just love their romance. It's just the best one in the series. The next book I picked up was for my other book club that I'm part of, which is Someone We Know by Sari Lapina, I believe. I'm sure I pronounced that very wrong. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is one of those thrillers that, I mean, I read this in basically one sitting, 1 or 2 sittings. I got through it very, very quickly, and I enjoyed the mystery elements of it. I don't think it's the most well-written thriller. I think I've read some better thrillers. I think it had a lot of really interesting moving parts that, all, of course, as you get through the book, it gets boiled down to what it really is about. It's basically this neighborhood where a woman dies. It's all the different neighbors trying to figure out the story. You've got the police officers, you've got obviously the husband. There's a lot of small town scandal, a lot of who's sleeping with who's cheating on who, why are there secrets between these people. My biggest complaint, again, is the ending. This is the month where I do not like the endings of books. It was like there was the mystery, there was the whodunit, they figured it out, oh my goodness, yay. And there was one final chapter to wrap everything up. And it really was just one line. There was one line about a character who was basically a red herring the whole book. And he's not a good person. Like, just from the get-go, he's sketchy as all get out. But it felt like there were open-ended endings, and then there was just not answering the questions endings. And that's what this felt like. It didn't feel very open-ended. It felt very much like the author reminded you about something that I personally had forgotten about or had written off as, well, this is probably the answer to that question. So the author reminded you that you didn't know the answer to this one singular thing, basically told you that everything that you thought was wrong, and then ended the book and didn't answer the question. Why bring it up again if you're not going to answer it? Like, it did not make a lot of sense. And there was definitely some stuff that was left open-ended that, like, as a reader, you go, oh, I know exactly how that's going to end. So there were some things that, like, it worked out okay, and the overall mystery was interesting. It was just that one last little bit, and this one character, and I'm like, just don't bring it up. Like, don't bring that part up. Why are we mentioning this if you're not going to answer it? Because now you're just taking me off as a reader. So, anyway, I ranted a lot about this in my vlogs, so I won't rant too much here. But, like, it was fine. It was about a small town. There's a lot of moving parts. Everything you want from, like, a good, like, suburban type mystery thriller, you get in here. It was fine. I definitely will read other things by this author. Like, this didn't deter my enjoyment enough to go, I'm never going to read from this author again. I think there are other things by this author that I'm definitely interested in, and there are people that I trust who really like other books by this author she's an author that I will try again for sure. It's just this one specifically, I didn't love it, and I think I was the only one in the book club who did not have raving things to say about it, especially the end. I just kind of like, I'll sit in my corner alone. That's fine. It just was meh, okay? I just felt meh about it. The next one that I picked up is the 5th volume of Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. I talk about this a lot. I gave this 4.5 stars. Trigger warnings in here. 4. So I will say, at the beginning of every single volume, there is a blanket content warning page for the entire series. So I've boiled that down to a few things, but there's always a content warning at the beginning if you want to read the whole thing. So trigger warnings for trauma from abuse, both physical and mental, and toxic relationships. So I talk about this graphic novel series quite a lot. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love this series. I love the art style. I love the way it's written. I love our characters. This one ended with many questions, and the last few have ended that way, but they ended in a way that, like, I could put the series down. Okay? Volume 6 is currently in my mailbox because I want to pick it up. Like, I think we have started doing some overarching plot things and overarching character things when it comes to the character of Persephone, and the way this book ended, I have questions and I need answers. And so I think there are 9 volumes that are out, so I'm definitely behind, which is good because then I can catch up now that I have things. I kind of talked about it a little bit, but this series, if you don't know, follows Greek mythology, specifically the story of Hades and Persephone, but it follows all of Greek myths. And if you can't tell by the person sitting in the chair, they are all very colorful. There are definitely different colors for different people, at least for all of the gods. Like Persephone is pink and Hades is blue, so you do have that vibe. But I just really enjoy these characters, and the pining between them is magical, and I love them, and I don't think I can say anything else that's not a glowing recommendation. So if you like Hades and Persephone, if you like the graphic novel style, if you like this very like cartoony-ish kind of art style, it does not steer away from the hard conversations, because there's a lot about Greek myths and mythology that is not good and kind of sucks. And a lot of retellings I've seen, some don't, but some of them will reimagine things happier. This does not, like, it does not shy away from the terrible things that happen in Greek mythology. So I like that. I will say, like I always mention with this one, if you have the app Webtoons, which is a free app, you can read this up to date now. I like getting them in the physical format, so you can read this for free if you choose to. I just like having these very heavy graphic novels. I love them. All right, the next book is the one that I DNF'd, and that is Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein by Anne E. Count. My DNF is about 47% of the way through, and trigger warnings in this book for child death. So this story is told in kind of two timelines, or two time periods, not timelines. You have the present, and then you have like 5 years in the past. Ish. I think it's 5 years. And so you have Mary Shelley, who obviously wrote Frankenstein, and she is at the house of another famous writer who I'm totally blanking on their name right now, because they use a nickname for him, and so I can't ever remember who it is. But anyway, he's another famous writer, and so she's with her husband. Well, they're not married. She's with the male Shelley, and they have a newborn son. And so she's dealing with these feelings of being a mother, and also like there is a lot of loss with her because she previously had a child that had passed away, and so she's got a lot of grief wrapped in that. There's also just like weird people sleeping with random people, and lots of laudanum and alcohol is involved. So I didn't like the present, and I don't know where it's going, but I think the point of the present is to get her to write Frankenstein, because there is like this writing competition between their friends. And so she is taking part in that, of course. And then you have the past, where she ends up staying with some family friends and becomes very, very close with the daughter, who is about her age. It is supposed to be, according to everything I've read, it is supposed to be a queer story. So I assume that there was something that grows between them. I did not make it to a point where that had happened yet. I think we were starting to have feelings, but I don't think anything came from them. So for me, it was just a weird experience because I was confused most of the time, especially when we were in the present time. I did not know what was happening. I did not know why we were doing what we were doing. And Mary was just kind of steeped in this sadness and grief, but also having to be a mother. And so she has to deal with all of that. The past was interesting because the past was also steeped in grief, but a different kind of grief. And you see just her becoming friends with this family. And so, I don't know, I just, the present, I didn't care about anybody, okay? I was bored most of the time. I was kind of forcing myself to get through this book, and I realized that I hated every single person that I was reading about, at least in the present timeline. In the past, they got better, and there were some people that I had lots of suspicions about, but in the present timeline, like, there was not a single person I liked. I don't know, I just couldn't find myself caring about anybody or the characters. So I decided to put it down, because I didn't want to spend my time reading something that I was going to give, like, generously. If I had continued this one, it would have had to do something amazing in the second half, but it was on track to get a 2-star. So I decided to just put it down and spend my time on something else that I actually wanted to read a lot more. The next book that I picked up was Magical Meet Cute by Jean Meltzer. I gave this 4.5 stars. Trigger warnings in this book for anti-Semitic language, domestic abuse, and then the trauma from that. So in this book, we have our two main characters, Faye and Greg. And Faye had a relationship that ended very, actually, she was engaged, I think. They were going to get married in a couple of months, and then it ended very abruptly. And she was a lawyer in New York City, and she sold her law firm, packed up her things, and moved to Woodstock, New York, and opened up a small witchy pottery store, and has been there for a couple of years. One night, she goes to a singles event at the synagogue that goes terribly wrong, because of course it does, and on her way home, she discovers these anti-Semitic flyers around and spreading a lot of hate. And so, in her very drunk, scared stupor, she creates what's called a golem, which is basically like a clay figurine. And she starts carving all the stuff into him to become a protector. It's like her way to cope, because she copes through pottery and working with clay. And so then she discovers that as she's working, she's putting all of her like perfect, what would make the perfect man as well. So she buries him in the backyard. And then the next day, she accidentally goes out on her bike and runs into this guy named Greg, who basically she causes amnesia by running into him with her bike. And so she feels terrible about this. He doesn't know who he is. He picks the name Greg out of thin air, and he ends up staying with her for a few months while he figures things out. And she thinks that she has quite literally created a golem, and he has just shown up, which is this guy. And you also get dual perspectives, so you do get both of them. And I found it really interesting to be in Greg's perspective, because especially at the beginning, he can really only get one word answers across. So you're in his head, and he's thinking all the things, and he is very a functional human and having very complex thoughts, but he can only get grunts and one word answers across. And so you see his progression of speaking. His language gets improved throughout the book. I really liked the story. I liked the two of them. What I found interesting is that, like, minus one moment, this is not really smutty. I mean, like, there is no sex on the page. There is a lot of lusting on the page. There's a lot of thinking one another is very attractive, and then thinking about the specific body parts that they find attractive, but there is no sex on page. So if you're someone who likes more of a clean romance, this is definitely your book. But there's a lot of pining. There's a lot of sexual tension between them. And I just made the story better. They are very, very open with each other. Like, she has a disability that came from an accident she had when she was younger. So she can't use, I believe it's her pointer finger. I might be wrong. There's a finger on one of her hands that she cannot use. And because of that, she thinks her pottery is not very good and therefore not worth it. And so she has a lot of mental blocks that she needs to get over. And then you've also got Greg, who's obviously has no idea who he is. And then you've got, besides the two of them, then you have this whole investigation of like this anti-Semitic group in the town causing problems. And they're trying to figure out who it is and why they're spreading all this hate. So there's a lot in this book. There's a lot packed into this book. But I loved it. I loved their romance. I loved the important conversations that they were having with each other. Because Greg is quite literally a blank slate. So it's a very cute romance, but just kind of be wary, because like the anti-Semitic language and those types of groups are very present in the plot of this, because that's kind of what brought them together. So I really enjoyed it. Jean Meltzer is an author that I just absolutely adore. I've read, I think at this point, everything that she has out, and this is one of the better ones in my opinion. So I really liked it. It's not super witchy. It's not witchy in the sense of like when you think of like fantasy witches. It's more witchy in the sense of like potions and the meaning behind certain symbols and things like that. It's more natural, maybe is the word I'm looking for. So it is witchy, but it's also not witchy at the same time. So I wouldn't consider this a fantasy by any stretch of the imagination. I liked it. I thought it was very well done. The next book that I picked up was actually the second volume of Rat Queens, which is a graphic novel series that I started. Honestly, I don't remember where I started the first one, but I only have the first two. I gave this 3 stars. I am going to unhaul this and the first one. Those are the only 2 that I own in the series. I decided to give it another chance. I remember not really loving the first one. Like, it was fine, but I didn't love it. And that's the case here. Like, most of this volume, I did not enjoy my time. It's very bizarre, because you basically have these 4 women who are all different species of mythical creatures, and they're like defending their town. And it's hard for me because like it seems that they do not like each other. Like, they do not care. about each other. It feels like they're playing it like liking each other instead of actually being friends. They just bicker the whole time. Plus, the plot of this is relatively gory and graphic, so like this is not a kid's graphic novel by any stretch of imagination. So it's not the most fun to look at either. So like there are some plot things and some history behind our characters that we learn about in this book, in this volume specifically, but like I don't care. I don't like them. I think the story's fine. It ends kind of on a cliffhanger, but I looked into what the next book was about and kind of figured out what that cliffhanger meant, and I realized I didn't actually care that much. So you do have a little bit of closure with most of this book, which is good because it feels like I can actually end on this one instead of I'm forced to read the next one because of the cliffhanger. But I don't know. I feel like I need to like the characters, and I just don't in this one. I don't think I like anybody. There might be one character I like, but most of them I'm not a fan. Alright, the next one that I picked up was The Double of Ice by Chris Holcomb, which is the first in the Hidden Gotham series. Trigger warnings for this book for homophobia. It's a huge part of this plot. I gave it 3.5 stars. This book follows our main character Dash, who co-owns a gay speakeasy in the 1920s. One of the patrons that goes to his club ends up dead, and he is blackmailed into helping figure out who this person was with the night he died. And so you have Dash kind of like digging into all the different underbellies of New York during the 20s. And then you also have like a mob boss that causes problems, sort of, but there's just so much because it's set in the world that it's set, because it's set in the queer community, because it's set in the 20s. There is so much language in here that is not the best and most fun to read. The author does do a little thing at the very beginning where he says a note from the author, and he talks about all of the language that's being used and why certain things are said and what certain things mean. So you kind of go in knowing that some of these terms are derogatory, maybe not slurs, but are derogatory in nature because of the time period. I liked the characters. I liked the mystery elements of it. I thought it was really interesting. It's hard to read because, again, there's so much homophobia in this book because, like, the person who's blackmailing them is blackmailing them because his brother's the one who passed away, and he thinks that his brother was with a drag queen, and he wants to know who this drag queen is. And because of that, and he does not agree with his brother's lifestyle, there was a lot of misgendering in the beginning and a lot of just terribleness, okay? And so it's kind of seeped into this story. So it is, be very careful of your mental state if this book sounds interesting to you, because like it is not the most fun to read. The mystery, fascinating. The story was really interesting. I like the characters, but like that's a really big part of the plot. So just be wary because it can get a lot at times. Another thing that was not my favorite about this book is that it's written for the 20s, which is fine. That's just not a time period I know a ton about. So there's a lot of like slang terminology, everyday terminology that's used that I have no idea what they mean. And I have to like either search, like look it up, or just from context clues try to figure it out. So it takes a lot of brain power to read this book, or it did for me. Like I had this on audio, but I had to focus when I had it on because I needed to know like what was going on, and if I didn't focus I would get lost really quickly with all of the terminology and all of the quick nature of the plot. So the second half of the book was much better because I knew what I was getting into. Like at that point I'd figured out what was happening with the book, I figured out what was happening with the writing, and I could make sure that I was reading this book when I was doing tasks that did not take a lot of brain power. Dishes, cleaning, putting it on when I'm driving home, things like that, instead of like just having it on all the time, which I do with a lot of audiobooks. So I liked this, and I'm not sure, I haven't decided if I want to continue, because it is, at least right now, there's 3 books in the series, and I think they're interesting, and like this one ended with somewhat of a cliffhanger. Like the the mystery in this book was solved, but there's an overarching kind of situation. And so, like, that I'm interested in, and I'm curious to see about the characters moving forward, but I haven't decided if I care enough. You know? And another problem was the audiobook narrator. I feel like the narrator that was chosen was the wrong choice, but that's a totally different situation. I still liked this book. Like, I know I've come to with a lot of problems, but I still enjoyed this book. I still enjoyed the plot. I did not expect the whodunit moment, and I found that very interesting. I liked it. I liked all the characters. I liked there's like the hint of a romance in here. It's very minimal. It's like basically non-existent. But I think it will become something in the next few volumes or in the next few books, which honestly might make me want to pick it up because I'm curious how that's going to end. Either way, it was fine. It was fine. The next book I picked up was The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy. This is the first in this duology. The second one is The Deathly Grimm, I believe is what it's called. This is a fairy loot book. I got it quite a few months, years ago. I don't know. I haven't had fairy loot for a while. October 2023. So, you know, that tells you something. This is a very interesting story. We follow our main character, Clara, and her best friend, Axel, and they live in this village on the outskirts of the Forest Grimm. And they have this book called, like, Sortis Fortuna or something, but it's like this book that once you turn, I think it's 16, you have one wish. You can make your one wish, and you wish into the book, and the book will tell you how to obtain your wish. But many years ago, the book was used for evil, and it caused the death of someone. And so ever since then, the forest has taken the book back, and now there's a curse on the land and the forest, and a lot of the people in this village become lost, which means that they are taken into the woods and never seen again. Clara's mom is one of the people who've gone into the forest. So you've got her, and she's trying to break the curse and save her mom. And then you've got her best friend Axel, whose fiance went into the forest the night before they were supposed to get married. So it's the two of them they go into the forest to figure out how to try to stop some stuff. The thing that I found very interesting, which I'm an idiot because I didn't process it based on the name of this book, is that this is steeped in Grimm fairy tales, obviously. So every time someone goes into the forest and becomes lost, they think that they are somebody else. So they run into certain people who they know as one name, and then the forest has turned them into someone else. So they go into the forest and they meet Rapunzel, they meet Hansel and Gretel, they meet Cinderella, they meet, I think it's Aurora or Sleeping Beauty, I can't remember which name that she goes by. You as the reader, you know the fairy tales, so you know how things are going to end. These characters do not. The fairy tales are not a thing in this world. It's just based on the fairy tales. It's kind of like a retelling of these fairy tales, if you will. So if you are someone who likes fairy tales, especially fairy tales that go a little to the dark gothic side, this is a great book. I really enjoyed reading it at this time of year because of those things. But I will say a lot of the plot things I've seen before. There's a lot of things in this book that feel like a YA fantasy that I've read a bunch of times before. They go into the forest, they meet a bunch of obstacles, they come to the end of the story. It's not like they've been following these directions and these riddles, and it's not what they think it is. Things are solved later. I've seen a lot of this stuff before, but I liked it. I've never seen it in this context before. So I am very excited to get my hands on the second one, hopefully soon. And I enjoyed it. I was toying between a 3.5 and a 4, but I think I put enough time where I keep thinking about it, and I keep thinking about it highly, that I went with a 4 on this book. Okay, I've had to readjust because the lighting is right in my eye. Alright, the next one that I picked up was New Names for Lost Things by Nora Unar. This one got 3 stars, trigger warnings for grief. This is a poetry collection. This is a highly personal reflection on loss, inheritance, and what is left behind on the non-linear path to becoming who you are meant to be. I've read a different poetry collection by this author. I want to say, like, right when I was starting BookTube, like 5 or 6 years ago. And I really enjoyed, actually it's more than that, but I really enjoyed that one. I think it resonated with me a lot. So when I found out that this author or poet had another poetry collection, I was all about it. This one didn't hit with me as much. There's definitely moments in here that I highlighted. There's definitely like full poems that meant something to me. Because like you've got a very interesting poetic style. You've got these like images with words all over them. It's definitely a collage style. You have some poems like this, which are written on paper. So it's definitely very interesting, but I think I just either read the last one at the perfect time for me in my life, and this one was just not at the perfect time, because like poetry, I keep talking about it whenever I talk about this in my vlogs, is poetry is such a personal experience. It's really hard to rate and talk about because there are things that may resonate with you that do not resonate with me, and vice versa. Or this book might resonate with me in 10 years, but it doesn't resonate with me right now. So like, I enjoyed it, but it definitely was not as much of an enjoyable experience as the first collection of poems I read by this author. And maybe it's just because now this poet has grown up. So like, these poems are a little more, you know, lyrical in nature, or have a lot more metaphors in them, and I just didn't pick up on them, which is totally possible. Also, I don't read a lot of poetry anymore. I used to read a ton of poetry. I don't really read poetry anymore. I only picked this one up because I liked this poet, and I liked their previous things. Like, I still gave it 3 stars because I still enjoyed a lot of this book. There are like a lot of things that did resonate with me, but I had to focus a lot on it. So it was just kind of fine. And the last book that I read in the month of September, technically I finished this on the 1st of October, but I read most of it in September, and it counts for the Magical Readathon, so I'm going to just stick it on to the end of this video instead of waiting a full month to talk about it. And that is Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. I gave this 5 stars. This is the second and final book in the Crimson Moth duology. The first one is The Heartless Hunter, at least in the US. So in this book, trigger warnings for sexual assault, and then the trauma that comes from that, and then also blood magic. The magic system in here is all about blood. So there's a lot of acts of like nicking your skin to create blood to do said magic and create said spells. The first book, let me talk about the first book a little bit. We follow our 2 main characters, Rune and Gideon. And Rune is a witch, but is hiding that fact. And it's set in a world where like witches are a big no-no. And so Rune also has this second like secret identity as the Crimson Moth, which is someone who protects witches and gets them out of the city. And so there is a witch that she is trying to find. Gideon is her best friend's older brother. He's also in charge of, like, he's a captain with the soldiers trying to hunt down witches. And so he's trying to figure out who the Crimson Moth is. So he has an inkling idea that Rune could be said Crimson Moth. And Rune is trying to find the location of this witch. So they basically both try to out-flirt the other one and try to make the other one fall in love with them so they can get the information that they need. And in doing so, they fall for each other. Shocking, I know. So it has that witch versus witch hunter dynamic, which I absolutely adore. I loved the first one. The first one got 5 stars. It sucked me in. I was so nervous going into this one because I loved the first one so much, and I've been hurt in the past where I've loved the first one and the second book has just been meh. That was not the case with this one. I did not have a hard time getting into this one. I actually had to spend like 5 or 6 days once I was done with this book before I even reviewed it, because I didn't even know what my thoughts were, except for, oh my god, I love this book. So all the things about the romance that I loved with the first book are still here. There's a lot of pining. The situations might have changed, but like all of the banter and the pining and the tension between them is still there, and I love it. And what I was worried is, based on how the first book ended, there's a lot about that I've seen with books that are similar to this, where you might get in the second book a bunch of the book where the main couple is not in the same space. That was not a problem. The 2 of them found each other very quickly, and most of this book was the 2 of them together trying to figure out whatever it was that they needed to figure out. So I love everything about the romance. The plot was also fantastic. Like, there were definitely some things that I saw coming. Like, there's one very big plot twist that is supposed to be a big reveal. Now, one of our characters learns before the other one, but I kind of saw that coming. I kind of knew what it was going to be, and then it was presented as like this big surprising thing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be a surprise, because I figured that out very quickly. But there are other things about this book and some surprises that I didn't pick up on. There were things that happened at the very end of the book, and I went, "Excuse me? You're who now?" That I went back once I was done with it to highlight the parts that I liked about it, and then I read a part and I went, "Well, that told me what it was right there," and I just missed it completely. This is so well crafted. I think is what I'm trying to say. It's definitely one that, if you can, I wouldn't put too much time between the two books. I put, I think, about a year, maybe two, and I still had some things that I was like, "Who's that again?" And then she would tell me, and I'm like, "Right." She did a good job of reminding me who everyone was and all the important things from the first book. And I do like that there's not a lot of miscommunication. I mean, there is some. There's not a ton of miscommunication between them. It's a lot of, they do talk about their problems. They just cannot see eye to eye on some things. I don't know. I could rave about this forever, so I will stop now. But I loved it. If you liked the first one, I think you will very much enjoy the second one. They go hand in hand very well, and I'm gonna hold on to these two books for a very long time. Like, look, you see, I've tabbed the crap out of it, and that's just tabs. I mean, I didn't even show you the parts that I've highlighted because, of course, I'm not gonna find one now. But I've highlighted a bunch of this book, so it was very good, and I'm very happy that I finished my readathon off with a 5-star. So that's my reading for the month of September. I almost said October. September. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you participated in the Magical Readathon yourself, if you were successful, or if just want to tell me how your reading in September went. I would love to know that as well. Just tell me all of the things. I hope you had a good September. Let me know. Let me know if you had a good September, or if you need to rant. That is acceptable too. And if you want to comment something but you're not sure what to comment, comment something green and leafy for the Forest Grimm, because this cover is very green and leafy. Something that reminds you of the forest. That works too. But that is all I have for you guys today. So I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links. So check all that out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.